It finally happened. After being rumored for years, Yamaha finally announced the release of the R9 for the 2025 model year, and it looks insane. There's a lot to talk about, so let's not waste any time. As you would expect, the R9 is going to have the same 899cc inline-3 engine featured in Yamaha's popular MT-09 motorcycle. In case you were somehow unaware, this engine brings some big-time torque at 68 foot-pound of torque at 7,000 RPM. That is only 14 pounds less than the R1 and an increase of 23 foot-pound over the former R6, which makes this R9 an absolute beast of a street bike. But before we delve into the horsepower numbers, let's dial back to the specs of this bike. The curb weight will be at 430 pounds wet, with a 120 front and 180 rear tire along with dual 4-piston Brembo brakes for the front on 320mm discs and a single piston 220mm disc for the rear. The front forks are going to be 43mm KYB fully adjustable with 4.7 inches of travel, and the rear is going to be a KYB shock, which is also fully adjustable with around 4.6 inches of travel. The R9 will have a twin spar cast aluminum frame, which is all new for the R9. However, the swing arm is supposedly the same off of the MT-09. The 2025 R9 will come in with a full electronics package, which is going to feature Yamaha's trip-controlled throttle, 6-axis IMU, 9-level traction control, 3-level wheelie control and slide control, lean-sensitive ABS and brake control, 4 power modes, 5 ECU modes, which feature sport, street, rain, and 2 custom modes. And wait, there is still more. The 2-engine brake control, a backslip regulator, up and down quick shifter, launch controlled, a variable speed limiter, full LED lighting all around, smartphone connectivity, and of course, cruise control. Oh, and I forgot to mention the ABS can actually be turned off for the rear for you track riders out there. Now let's get right into the looks. The R9 appears to be a much beefier R7 crossed with an R1. You have that similar front headlight design that you see in the R7, but it's wider and flanked by, of course, a set of massive winglets designed to hopefully help keep that front end down. Yamaha continues its trademarked fuel tank shark vent design. And now let's move on to the tail. It is something totally different than what I've seen on other Yamahas. Although it follows the same general scheme we see on the other models, the R9 has this sort of step up and taller appearance versus the more wider appearance we see with the other models. Overall, the R9 follows the design scheme of the Yamaha Supersports very well, and it blends in with the rest of the lineup. But thanks to its massive winglets, it is also unique in its own way. And also, it does have a very odd underbody exhaust design, which is of course taken directly off of the MT-09. I don't think this looks bad, but it does distinguish the looks of the R9 over the other Supersport bikes. When I first heard about the R9, I was worried that it would feature a tall seat like the R6 and R1, but at 32.7, it is very manageable for most normal height riders. And finally, of course, the electronics. I still can't believe all that is packed into this bike. It has so many superbike features wrapped into a $12,500 Supersport bike. And yes, you heard that correctly. I didn't mention it before, but the price is $12,500 and it competes perfectly with the 600 class, and it brings a much torquier engine to the fight. However, we need to talk about the problem with the R9. And actually, problem is not the correct word, but instead I guess we can say what makes this R9 unique. And of course, that's the triple 890cc engine. It is a torquey powerhouse, as we discussed. However, with that, you might expect some big horsepower. The old R6 was pushing out around 117 horsepower, so this R9 should in theory put out like 130 to 140, you would think, right? But it doesn't. Rumors are that it only puts out 117 horsepower. Yes, the same amount of power as the old R6. But who cares about horsepower? Torque is always better than horsepower, and it is much better of a street bike than the R6. I personally don't think the horsepower is going to be a problem. But I'm here to tell you that people are going to complain about it. I just don't think it's a big deal at all. 117 is plenty of power to have fun, and this bike is going to make great low-end and mid-range power, a lot more than any other Supersport, especially a 600 or a 636. Now, of course, nobody's been able to respond to the R9 yet, since it hasn't come out yet, but let's compare it to some of the other bikes that are similar in a way. Of course, you have the Daytona 660. Being another inline 3, it only makes sense to compare the two. The specs absolutely blow the Daytona out of the water. Of course, you could expect that considering it has over 230 cc's more of displacement, but I think the R9 is going to have a bigger problem. I don't think people are going to compare it to the 660. I think they're going to compare it to something else, and that problem has an S on its gas tank. And of course, I'm talking about the GSX-R 750. Hear me out quickly. The GSX-R costs nearly the exact same at $12,600. However, the GSX-R makes just a little bit more power than the 117 the R9 will produce. How much more? Well, 31 more. Yes, the GSX-R makes 148 horsepower, a big jump from the R9. But it's not all about power, right? It's about torque too. Well, normally you would be right, except the GSX-R actually only makes 4 pounds less at 64 foot-pound of torque. That is not a big difference at all. And the main issue, of course, here is something I haven't even mentioned, but that's weight. The GSX-R 750 only weighs 418 pounds, 12 pounds less than this R9. In my opinion, the GSX-R 750 is still king of the middleweight sport bike class. It is just such an insane value proposition of power and refinement. Nothing even comes close to it that isn't a 1000. The only benefit of the R9 over the GSX-R is the modern and state-of-the-art electronics, and only you can decide if that's worth it. I guess it comes down to what you want. Do you want the inline 3-cylinder with the modern technology, or do you want the bar none most powerful and lightest option available in the GSX-R 750? I wish Yamaha and the R9 well, and I hope for success for this new bike. I am happy Yamaha is innovating and creating something new. I hope to ride this bike once the summer comes around. So if you guys actually want to see a first ride on this bike, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. I plan on riding this bike once the summer comes around, and I'll make a video on that so you guys can check it out. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take care, and bye-bye.
Let me live my life, the one I'd better lead. All the plans of fantasies, and we looked at them 11 ways. You said, look at me.